Hi, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. It's going to be a Talking Trucks episode. I've got my frequent guest here. I think he's been here for every one of the ones that we've done with this moniker. That's Ricky Riley, and we also have Win Slauch from the Apparatus Workshop podcast that you can also catch at fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast. So today we are going to dive into cabs. What got me kind of wanting to do one on cabs is an article that we're going to be running in our March issue. It's coming up, but it also touches on something I wrote about in an editorial not too long ago about the hidden effects that one decision on one part of the rig can have on a number of different parts of the rig. One of those parts being the cab. Also, there is an awful lot that we can do with the cab, and depending on the busyness, the frequency of your runs in your fire company, your ratio of working jobs to just going back and forth for smells and bells. We spend a lot of time in the cab. There are a number of things that we can do to improve the conditions inside the cab for our firefighters. Just the ride. And there are a number of things that we can do to make those cabs very, very efficient for when we're exiting the cabs. I wanted to get into interior. I wanted to get into exterior today because I wanted to hit the cab as a whole. So I guess to get us started, we'll talk about the interior first because that's where we are most of the time. Ricky, you're going to come at this, I think, more from your experiences, speccing these out. When you're going to come more, I think, from a perspective of the consultant here, where you're helping fire departments make the right decisions about those cabs. So I guess just to get us started, let's talk about the interior of the cab. Have there been anything, Ricky? I'll start with you throughout your time speccing these out. Riding on any number, speccing them out for the departments that you've worked for, but you've also been a long time volunteer in at least two different companies that I know. Have there been any like interior cab fails that you can talk about where it's like, you don't want to do this ever? Has there been anything that you've seen over time that has just been like, I'll never do that again?
Wow, that was a pretty big question to lay off what I've not done. I think our biggest mistakes when pre-COVID was porous seats, and then obviously having a ton of plastic in the cab. Regardless of manufacturer, I think that was a way most manufacturers are moving towards to help reduce, some of cost and, how the DAS clusters went together and all that sort of stuff. So when COVID hit, we saw the damage that the cleaning solutions were having on the interior of the apparatus. I think that's when we kind of really started to take a shift in our cab design, as we refer to like seats and the dash and gauges and how we protect the switches. And I mean, you never know if that's ever going to come back again. Let's hope not, for goodness sake. But we went to a couple of different manufacturers, and I got to give our local dealer for Emergency One a big nod because they had started to harden a dash on a couple of their E1 rigs, and I was like, well, how do you do that? Can you show me that? And we weren't buying that cab, but just to go to show that this guy was a good dealer, a good friend, a good vendor. We don't buy rigs from him, but we send a lot there to get repaired. But hey, this is how we get more plastic out of the cab, and so. We were able to make that apply to the apparatus that we buy. It's standard now. And then obviously, we're finding out that, having porous seats was not good during COVID, for the cleaning solutions and how material gets caught in there. And I think that also goes for the same thing as, and I know you have a question in it later about clean cabs, is that, we don't want any porous materials in there to capture the carcinogens, either from our PPE or from our station uniform. So, once again, I think those are the two big ones. And, now going back to that, we're sticking with that just because I think it makes the cab a lot easier to clean. especially with, if you got painted aluminum or you've line X'd it or anything like that. And then obviously we're very rarely sending stuff out to get reupholstered now. It's usually just, hey, just call the seat company and get a seat shipped in here. We get it with the pressure switch already built in it, and just plug and play into the apparatus. So, but I would certainly say that the biggest mistakes were, a long time ago when we had all this staffing, and we had these big, huge cabs, and long bodies, and it would take a football field to turn a pumper around. I think most fire departments, regardless of size, regardless of combination, career, volunteer, have all gone to a smaller cab to help reduce the wheelbase. And then I think a lot of people have gotten even away from large bodies, once again, to help reduce the overall length and the overall wheelbase. So,
Wayne, how about you on your travels? What have you seen that so, some things that maybe you tried to get a department to not do because you knew it wasn't going to work, and it ends up they do it, they prove you right, and now they're going back, I guess, maybe to the drawing board a little bit on their next rig to try to redesign the interior of that cab.
Yeah, I think Ricky mentioned most of it. I mean, to be honest, we just did a fleet evaluation this week with 10-man and 8 and 10-man cabs on ladder trucks. I mean, you're talking just the extended wheelbase just on that cab itself on a ladder truck, and the fact that you can't even fit 8 firefighters in the back of that thing comfortably. Most people aren't going to have 8 firefighters anymore. But just that, and I think we can talk about this in a little bit, but just also what the number of seats does to the weight carrying capability and the NFPA ratings of that fire truck, and then how the manufacturers have to build onto that and bigger components, bigger pieces. I agree with the hardened dashes and, trying to limit poor surfaces. Again, with the clean cap stuff, we could talk about that in a little bit. I think the biggest thing I see, and it more comes from fleet evaluations than actual the speccing of fire trucks, but you go and do a fleet evaluation and you sit in a driver's seat, and you can even do this. We do this at FDIC also, or any, if we go to the PA Fireman's Expo, any expo really, if you sit in the front cab of a fire truck and you, as a driver or an officer, and you look across the windshield and just look at what people are doing to block the view of the driver, the big things everybody's adding now are the down view mirrors, but they forget to look across the cab or the engine tunnel, and they put computers, they put thermal imagers, their helmets, things like that block the view for that driver, for that front corner. I think that's the biggest thing that I see as a downside, or what people are doing to, affect the capabilities of their cabs. So
you alluded to it there. The having an 8-seat or an 8-person cab, a 10-person cab, what that does to the weight carrying abilities of that truck. You add on a ton of weight. Sometimes you got to go to a different engine. You're making the truck a little longer because you want the little longer of a cab. Talk about some of the decisions that departments make that within the cab and outside of the cab that impact the cab. And I know that sounded a little confusing, but I'm thinking of things like, inside the cab, you add all those seats, forever the cabs were, as far as I can remember, and the ones that we were buying until relatively recently, maybe the last 15 years, it was always 96-inch cabs. We can go bigger now, but it depends on each department, but a lot of times, depending on how many seats you want to put back there, you have no choice. You're going to have to make that cab wider. If you've made other requests or added certain things that require a larger engine, the doghouse is going to change. Maybe at that point you have to go. So those kind of things are what I'm thinking about. And so talk a little bit about some of the decisions that departments are making that they don't initially realize are going to touch on the cab of the truck.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing off the bat is the number of seats that you're going to put in apparatus. Each seat's 250 pounds. That gets counted against that apparatus. That has to be figured into the axle, the braking capabilities, the tires. So again, you start to increase the axle weight, the axle size. You're going to start to increase your tires, which then could decrease your turn radius and cramp angles and things like that. So that's the big thing is. When you're building a new fire truck, just because you had 10 seats or even just because you had 6 seats in it before, doesn't mean that you require that many seats, at this point. And doing that evaluation of your staffing, even in a volunteer firehouse, who's coming, how many people are we getting out the door on this first fire truck, can change that. NFPA has, and with the EPA and NFPA, there's some changes that I don't think a lot of us have with the engine stuff. We just don't know enough of it yet. What is that? What are the new, engine tunnels going to look like? How big are they going to be when they start adding all the after treatment and the cooling to them? And how big are they going to be just with the engines in general? I think that there's a little bit of that knowledge out there for the manufacturers, but some of us haven't seen it all. And then the second thing that came out of the NFPA that because it didn't go into effect until last January, we haven't probably seen any trucks built on NFPA 1900 finished, I guess I would say. And Ricky may know something different, but I don't think we've seen one finished yet, just with the timelines. But they changed the whole seating policy from a primary to secondary with the amount of space and width that you have between the people and between the bottom of the cushions for an air pack seat and the top of the shoulders versus a non-air pack seat that you have to kind of differentiate between now. So why that came out new, I think there's in the process, you look in the spec and it says primary or secondary, but they both have air packs in them. And I think there's a lot of unknowns to that yet. But I think as far as cab width, that's a preference based on the manufacturer you're going to go with, and then the cab that you're going to go with. Everybody has a 94 to 96 inch cab, and then everybody has a wider 100-inch cab or wider. Again, that's some people don't consider that when they do when they're speccing their fire truck out. If you're going to have a rescue truck that doesn't go off the road, then the wider cab might work for it. But if you have a ladder truck or an engine that has to go down, narrow streets or driveways, an area we just reviewed yesterday. I mean, I'm not sure how they even fit their engines down it now. But putting that wide cab, in that spec is not a smart move there. So, it limits you, to what engine or cab and chassis you're going to use at that point. But I think the big thing is just to cab wise is that the seats do affect it. Again, look at it, make sure you put the right amount of seats in for the people that you have. And look at everything as a whole and how that's going to affect you. Keep the cab small. If you don't have to add extra compartments, off the back of them, and you can keep it to, a 70-ish, 68 to 72 inch cab, I think that's where you want to kind of be. If for some reason you have to push that to longer and longer, make sure it's for the right reasons, but not to do it just because, you carried 10 people before and you need to carry 10 people today, because it's probably not the same reason.
You brought up an interesting point that, I was taking it from what other decisions impact the cab, but you also went over a couple of decisions that impact the rest of the truck, when you get into the braking and you're adding, the weight of those seats. Ricky, what about you? Have you seen, as you've been going through this, where you get to maybe the engineering conference and they're like, okay, we can do that, but it's going to do this, this, and this to the rest of the truck, or the things that you've done to the rest of the truck are going to do this, this, and this to the cab?
Yeah, I think the biggest, I wrote down a couple of notes from when Win was commenting on there is that, even in my own department, we have a safety factor built into the front axle on top of the NFPA standard, because you leave it to any corporation or anybody, they're going to go, well, I loaded it up to 19,999, and it's a 20,000 pound front axle or or 19.5 or whatever it is. Obviously if you're 19.5, you're going to be over your 19.990. But so we add an extra 3% on top of that for the age of the vehicle. And when I say the age of the vehicle is that, when you take it down to your fabrication shop or whoever's going to do your equipment mounting, and you mount your mount boxes and you got your NFPA 250 pounds, like Win said, and then we start adding thermal imagers, then all our SCBA, then start adding tools and EMS bags, and then all the other stuff. That weight starts to creep up. So we try to make sure that over the life of the vehicle, as we keep adding stuff to the cab, which we all want to do. I mean, we have paramedic engines that were not designed to be paramedic engines. So now we're adding the Medivaults and all the EMS bags and the cabinets. And so, we try to make sure that we have that extra built in to the front axle. So we get, I just did a review of some weights the other day, and, they were within 200 pounds of the front axle rating. So I'm like, all right, you guys need to bump that thing up, man. There's no way, shape, or form. And I'd say 250 is a pretty low bar for us to be waiting for a firefighter in full PPE and carrying all the stuff that he has. And look, I'm not the 180 pound firefighter anymore. So as we keep adding weight, that 250 is a little on the low scale. So, and then I think Win hit it on the head, and I think not that he glazed over it on purpose, is that Win may see it, or his group may have seen it, the Wilbers, but I still haven't seen anything that's going to tell me how much this motor is going to weigh if I buy a Cummins. If that's what I want to buy. I'm not calling them out. I mean, I know they're trying to meet the federal standard. I mean, literally, I think we talked about it on the show, man. I had 2 consulting customers, call me the day after the presidential election and say, we're going to get rid of the EPA standard, so we're going to go back to our new motors. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's happening, pal. I don't think Cummins is going to take a 90 degree, whatever manufacturer is going to make a 9-degree turn and go, we're going to bet on the presidential election to change the weight of our motors and change the new EPA standards. And even looking at our new tiller that we got on order, we're already starting to see them. Oh, well, you may have to extend the tractor a little bit. We're not sure how big this canister is going to be or how it's going to fit on the trailer. On the tractor. So, I think a lot of that stuff is huge into we don't have the answer. So even for the customer, I can't imagine, for me, I kind of understand it that, regardless of manufacturer, they don't have the answers. I mean, if the engine manufacturer, and I think, we've probably said it on the show 100 times, look, the fire service is not a driving force in the engine world, the engine building world. Cummins goes, that's really great. You're putting a, Cummins motor in our fire truck, but we don't have any clout in that.
We're a tiny world. Part of the market. They're
like we can
customer
say,
base.
We're going to buy, XYZ motors, and, we can't, we just can't. There's like a couple motors that we can buy, and that's about it. And, other than like a PACCAR and the Cummins, and I guess I don't even know if CAT's certified in a bunch of stuff. Obviously Detroit's not. So, when we talk about cabs, and, I'm going to lead us into another subject, Chris, is that for us, we're trying to design the cab, and then we keep adding stuff. I know in Northern Virginia and all those places, just the service that we deliver demands us to keep adding things to fire trucks. The ballistic vests, the ballistic helmets, now, if you're a medic engine, how we're going to have to control the substances by temperature, and, how we have to keep them locked. And then, we're actually talking about taking seats out. We're only riding 4 in the back, but, because we were trying to be nice to go, hey, if you're riding in the SCBA seat, you're facing backwards. That way, when you open up the door at a fire, you got that motion going forward to go out the door, rather than sitting in a center forward facing seat where you'd have to pull out, turn, and then go down. So I'm like, all right, which seat do we take out to help facilitate carrying all this extra equipment that we're going to need and have to be climate controlled and so forth and so on. But once again, we do a big deal with pack track in the compartment because we don't want the fire truck at the middle of its life or at the end of its life to look like Swiss cheese as our mission changes. And there are firefighters that are out there that are just going to change the cab just because A shift wants to do it this way, B shift wants to do it that way, and C shift wants to do it that way. But the department's mission can certainly change yearly depending on, what the new mission is. And, those come up for all of us all the time. And then, the standards that have to be met and everything else. So, we do a lot of things where, we can interchange, whether it be pegboard or pack track in there. So we're not drilling into the cab of the fire truck and then, drilling into a hole that's going to now, water and dirt is going to get into the cab and all that kind of craziness. But, we, in Florida, we went with 100-inch cabs. We had 100-inch cabs and 100-inch bodies, but we got really wide streets. Even though it was an old city, the only really tight streets were downtown, and they really weren't that bad. But we wanted to be able. We had a lot more mission. We had paramedic engines, and we had the ballistic vests, and then we had water rescue because obviously surrounded by water in Florida. So all these different missions demanded that we have more space. Now in mine and Win's department, so I think all of us are like lower overall length, low wheelbase. Less time we spend in an intersection, the better chances we have making it through unscathed. So we kind of go through that process. So I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to hijack it there.
Oh, no, that's okay. I wanted to talk about some of the compartmentation because it gets into a couple of points that you guys just made. And it's the weight. You add a compartment inside the cab, it's going to add some weight in there. Then you're going to load it up with equipment, and then that's going to add weight. Now, where I also come from, not in my head, is that I'm 6'4", and I'm lanky, and I am always hitting my head on things as I'm coming out. So, like, not only is it the impact that the compartmentation inside a cab will have on the weight and all that, but it's also the ergonomics of it. Where, so what do you guys see? What are your, I guess, your best practices if you're going to put a compartment in? We've had them up top. We've had them in the middle with a roll up door. We've had them to where, they're accessible inside and out. Ricky, what are some of the best practices you've seen for putting compartments in those cabs?
Is not having 6'4" firefighters. That's what we try. We try to, it's the limit, but, obviously my old alma mater in Fairfax, they have all, these raised roof things, which, just make me want to throw up in my mouth, but, it is what it is. But, but once again, it's all about, hey, how tall I am, how I'm hitting my head, how am I going to put my gear on? Obviously I think you're supposed to be seatbelt. I think that's what the general order says there. So, I don't know what standing up has to do with it. But, I'm
talking about when I get to go to leave the cab. I don't want to bang my head into things and stuff like that. Not en route.
Yeah. I think the cab, we did away with anything with kind of roll up. I think the roll up door just always takes away so much space from inside the compartment. We even did away with the doors. We just more or less just put two, like Zyko straps on whatever we're going to do to make it easier to get stuff in and out. But, once again, it depends on your mission. We're still putting Howling bars and axes inside the cab with a pack certified, G-force mount. Once again, to get that stuff out of the weather so it doesn't get rusted and all that sort of stuff. But we make sure that we put it just inside the cab door, along with, like, if you're riding a paramedic engine, with the life pack monitor and the drug bag, so you don't have to carry that bag outside and down a step, so you can reach in and get it. Based on that ergonomics. And, that negates some of those compartments that you put inside the cab. But, then you got airway bags, oxygen bags. There's 16 bags that ALS people got to carry with them. They all have specific little names. And, you carry whatever bag that calls for. But, we can't carry it all everywhere. And even with, depending on the apparatus that you buy and how they vent them, we're still dealing with a little bit of the dirt and grime inside every compartment on every rig. We actually went back to our manufacturer and said we wanted to try to find a way to cut off the airflow from the back vents. So, when we're putting ALS equipment or we're putting EMS equipment in a side compartment, that it's not getting covered in dirt and grime. So we ended up with putting a piece of rubber back there. So, the vent doesn't, allow the dirt and grime to get in. But, obviously I think, obviously you guys got a lot of stuff in the cab over there in Virginia. So,
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think there's two things Ricky said there. I'm not a fan of race roof cabs either, but I was thinking the same thing as we talk about it. In Arlington, we're almost building up. We have to add compartments on the top of, in our dunnage areas, because we don't have room for all the stuff that we have to carry to keep the truck short. And you're almost adding up. So, again, I'm not a fan of raised roofs, but they are extra storage space. So, looking at the needs and the mission of the vehicle and how you're going to fit that stuff in there, it could become an option again. I think you have to look at, and it's, I'm not a fan of roll-up doors either. I would prefer not to have any doors, but we have drug bags that have to be behind double locks, so that we have to have a solid door with a lock on it. We have to have, I heard Ricky said the medic vaults that we now we have vaults that keep our narcotics in them. And sometimes you have to think about how you're going to move that stuff in and out of the fire truck. Whether it's, like Ricky talked about, doing away with seats. Can you do away with a seat, of rear facing seat, and put a compartment there that has access both from the inside and the outside, so you're not stepping down from the apparatus with the extra weight. In our new tower, we went with a 60-inch cab. Well, you're not putting a compartment in there, but we still have to put the same amount of equipment in there. So how do we design shelving? And we designed a shelf that comes across where an old dog box used to be, essentially, for the engine tunnel. That we have shelving in there. And I'm sure Ricky's been through some of that in PG, but sometimes you don't have the choice. It's not ideal, but you have access from both sides with it. And then there's a drop-in drug box or a drop-in compartment to put the drug bag in. So it's thinking through those processes. And it's for me on the consultant side, or when we're building a fire truck, it's making sure that you think through that process before you go to the pre-construction conference. Think through that process, why you're signing the contract before you sign it, so that you've captured that in the cost of building that. And then, again, so that you have an idea and a thought process as to what you're doing with the apparatus that you're building. But it's not easy to carry stuff and still have a cab that's visible and easy and safe to move around in. I'm not moving around while you're driving, but while you're trying to get stuff out of it. You don't want to be tripping over things and falling out of the cab door while you're trying to get out with 800 different things that you have to get. So it's thinking through that whole process as you're designing that fire truck.
When those rigs pull into the shop and I look in the back of these things, it looks like at 7:00 they moved into the fire truck. Lunch bags, lunch pails, cords, phones, iPads, extra clothes. I mean, it looks like, rather than, have a locker at the station, they just put everything in the back of the fire truck for the day. And the way some of our paramedic engines run calls, I guess I can see why they would do it. They want to have snacks and, a USB port, or a USB-C port now. So
right. Yeah. You got to have them cup holders. And then we even went as far, you had to put somewhere to put your cava. So,
yes, it's kind of a big deal. So, but it's the amount of spaces, it's getting eaten up every day. So,
yes, yeah.
I don't want to forget the driver and the officer. Not only the driver having everything where the driver can get to it easily as far as the operation of the vehicle, and the officer side. We're seeing more and more, but you alluded to it earlier when with the laptops now. Sometimes they're on the doghouse. Sometimes they're on like a sliding tray on right in front of the officer. Plus whatever, kind of tools sometimes the officer likes to have with him, right. So as soon as he gets off the truck, he can grab it. What are you guys seeing there? Win, what are you recommending for the driver and officer for not only for their comfort, I think, but also for functionality? What are you suggesting to companies that come to you when you're doing your fleet evaluations? What are you noting that might need to be changed, or that might make those areas a little bit more efficient?
Sure. I think, again, and it depends on the manufacturer and the cab type, but one of the things is to always make sure that your SCBA seat for the officer is pushed as far back as possible. If that thing's hanging 6 inches off the seat box, and that's going to cut down on the space between the edge of the seat and the dashboard. So ensuring that you can get that seat pushed back as far as you can is key. Again, that's manufacturer dependent. Like you said, what's your MDT or your computer or whatever look like? Some people just have iPads, which is great. Some people have, laptops, full computers. So you think about that. Think about your, where if you're going to mount a bar or something up there, how are you going to do that safely and still provide that space? For me, it gets even granular. Like what side do you want your pedal to be on? If you're going to have pedals, are you going to have a pedal for your cue, your air horn? Is it going to be a push button? Is the pedal going to be on the floor? A lot of people like to put them on the dash now. Where is that going to go that's functional? One of the big things, and this might sound crazy, but in Arlington, when we go, we sit in the cab and you put your hand up and, instead of the air horn being way up here, I want the air horn to drop down right here so that when my arm's on the thing, we just run a line straight up and down. And then I just drive down the road and like this, and then hit the air horn with it. But it's figuring out where they need to put that air horn, activation to make that possible. So it's little things like that. On the driver's side, I think the big thing on the driver's side is the handle that helps you get in and out of it, even on the officer side as well. Can you go from a plastic handle to an aluminum, a knurled grip handle that makes, non-slip, makes getting in there a little bit easier, provides a little bit more strength than the plastic handles. As you practice getting in, is a handle in the right spot, or is it where they want to put it? If it's way, a lot of people put them way up high on the A-post. Well, you're not grabbing a hold of that until you're stepped into it. So, do what you can to make those move and ergonomically, accessible. Steps, are a big thing. 24 inches is the first step, and 18 inches after that. But making sure that, again, the tire size, the axle isn't affecting that. And then again, making sure you put the right step on if you have to put an additional step on too, because they can be just, something that you think is helping you can be just as dangerous, and it can hurt you because you can't step on it properly, or it swings because you don't want it to get hit on something. And again, it's not in the right position. So I think those are the big things. You're talking, we talked about engines earlier. Obviously, we put an X15 or a 600 plus horsepower engine in it. The engine tunnel is going to come up 4 or 5 inches to fit all that in there. So you've already decreased some of your sight, your line of sight. And I think it's just more of that. Just think of it from the driver's perspective on what they're looking at as you're going to mount your tools, and where that MDT is going to go, where your thermal imaging camera is going to go, where you might put the helmet. I think those are the keys. That down view mirror is a huge help for the driver. So make sure one of those is on your apparatus, and make sure it's the right size so you can see properly. But those are, the big things. We talked about seats earlier. That's, porous versus non-porous is the key there. We want to be able to clean it. Everything's got some sort of water, permeability, or not, it's not permeable to water. So you can wash everything, but when you have a porous type material, it just makes it harder and harder to clean. So I guess that's mine, Ricky. You want to?
I know. The drivers, I can remember going to, that same conference that you were talking about earlier, the Mendoza conference, and I'm sitting in a panel with Ray McCormick, and I'm like, how do we not have heads up display yet? How does my Chevy Tahoe have a heads up display and my fire truck doesn't? So, to keep my eyes focused down, downrange, down through the windshield. And by no far stretch of the mind is that I want to add anything electronic to any of my fire trucks. It's enough already. With the weather that we've been going through in the last couple of weeks in our region. Every weak link in every fire truck, regardless of manufacturer, is rapidly exposed by the harsh weather, the salt, the brine, the washings that take place. So, I don't want to add anything electronic, but it's got to be, once we get in that cab, is that, that driver's got to be encapsulated in what he needs to do, being able to see, and then obviously, once again, we're not responsible for what computer we're buying. That's a different department in the county government, is to go, yep, this is the computer you're buying, and they could change that any time of the day. And now we got to reconfigure the bracket, and then we just if we got it tucked down close, now it could be a 1-inch stubby that makes it sit up, and now it's right in the way. Every time the officer flips the screen up, now the guy or the girl that's driving the fire truck can't see out the right side mirror, just like Win was talking about, or even looking at any of that stuff, looking at the down mirror, over the officer's side. So as we keep adding stuff, as we keep demanding more stuff be inside that cab, and and then within grasp of the officer, all the stuff that we're demanding he or she carries, it can't be to the detriment of being able to see outside the cab. And absolutely 100% tools in the cab have to be in an NFPA approved G-force mount. And I understand it 1,000%. I mean, I've ridden officer, I've ridden in the back of a fire truck, is like, NFPA stands for not for practical application. It has no business, am I doing my job? But look, as we get older and start to understand, the accidents that we get in, the injuries that can incur to the firefighters that are riding those rigs, is it's important that we protect them. A Halligan bar flying through a cab, a Halligan bar with exposed forks, in the front seat of the fire truck, even though it's nicely mounted, it may very well have a, that G-rated mount holding it in, but the forks are exposed. And you're going to hit those, man. That's going to hurt, and it's going to leave a mark, and it may leave a really bad mark. And anything that could fly through the cab. I don't want to have the imager in the charger. I want it attached to my coat. And I'm all about getting out of the rig and going to work. But if the imager's just laying inside the cab, that thing starts flying through the air. And look, man, you can look at fire engineering, any other fire service website, and then in the sheer amount of fire apparatus accidents is on the rise every day. And so we have to protect ourselves from ourselves, as manufacturers, as vendors, as as managers that run these shops, and just to help protect our firefighters. Because look, they're going to try to find a shortcut to get to do their job, and I fully understand it. But we can't have it so they could actually get that hurt by something we've done or we've mounted inside the cab. We do a pretty good job of checking that stuff when it comes into the shop to make sure nobody's like laid something in there, or for better or worse, if they've tried to mount it themselves, and then drilled into a wiring harness or something like that, because those channels, they're there to mount stuff on. They're not there to run wires or anything. It's a big deal. But once again, CAD stuff is important. I mean, that's where these men and women, that's where they live for their 24-hour shift, or that's where they live, for their duty night, or just even for that run. So making sure that we as the designers, we as the consultants, even the manufacturers, make sure those cabs work for our firefighters. And Win said it, we don't know. For us, it was always like, you got to get the biggest motor possible. It's unthinkable. And I remember, when I was at Kentland, somebody said, I said, well, if we get to 450, we're going to be able to cut the engine tunnel down a little bit. Look, would you rather have $4.50 or $5? I go, I'd rather have $5. Well, we're getting the 500 horsepower motor, and of course now, the engine tunnel, even going through the cab, is huge. And like, we just got to kind of understand. So now, like you say, we got a 600 horsepower motor, and what Cummins or PACCAR, everybody's going to do with that motor, I can only imagine it's going to start to rise, and we're going to start to go back to where the engine tunnel is so high, there's going to be a slope towards the windshield, to actually be able to see. So we'll have to go back to those old Ward LaFrances, where he had the double windshields, so.
Well, before I leave the interior of the cab and talk about some exterior stuff, I wanted to hit on clean cab real quick. It was a while back that it first came to fruition. I'm just curious if you guys are still seeing it much. My opinion of the clean cab concept from the very beginning was that it was an a la carte kind of thing. just because it recommended putting SCBA somewhere else didn't mean you had to do it. And I'm just curious about, did anything, well, first, I guess, are people still thinking about it? I think that they are. We were talking about the porous seats and going to surfaces that were easier to clean and that would be more resistant to some of the solutions that we found were causing some issues during COVID. But also, there's been air purification systems that they've been putting in the cabs. So I just, did from the clean cab concept, looking back, have any of the items on that list been used in both of your experiences? Are they more prevalent? Are people not really, they're kind of thinking about, carcinogens and reducing exposure, but they're not, going full bore into that concept the way we were. Ricky, I'll start with you on that one. What do you see? I mean, you're speccing these things out all the time. You just ordered a chiller. Like what are you guys looking at when you do that in terms of what we were calling the clean cab concept?
I was hoping you were going to go to Win first. So, hey, we were talking before the show, it's the blacked out or murdered out was a fad. Clean cab's a fad. I think it had all great intentions, and I think a lot of stuff that they've started will stick. I mean, obviously, I don't think even my department or even my old departments were ever thinking about decontaminating themselves at the scene. Having shower heads on the side of the fire trucks to get all that stuff off you even before you get in the cab. But I mean, to get that all the way through, I mean, the amount of money that you'd have to spend to get that, to get that. I mean, hey, yeah, we know our PPE works, but when you get back to the firehouse, your station uniform smells like smoke. I mean, it's permeated through your PPE into your uniform, and now you're going to climb back into the cab that you say is clean, and then now you're going to sit in the seat and you're going to take all that back and put it back inside the cab. I mean, unless you're taking the measures to go all the way from, we're not going to use the same SCBA harness, we're not going to use the same bottles, we're going to have second sets of gear at the scene, and then how are we going to get them changed out into a second set of station uniforms and then get it back and then clean the cab? It's just everybody takes it in little pieces, I think. I think fire departments say, I don't think SCBAs are a huge deal. I mean, we're going to get ready to go back to wireframes and, not even padded SCBA. So when we're decontaminating at the scene, we're doing, my number will probably be off, but, we're 80 or 90% going to get all the junk off of there, with the scrubbings and everything. And then we're going to put it back in the cab. I just don't understand why we create all this extra compartment space to store things, SCBA, take our gear and not store it in the cab. I think for busy fire departments, it's impractical. If you're a rich, small fire department and, call volume is not your problem like it is for most of us, then yeah, knock yourselves out, go full bore. But for busy fire departments that demand units being in service, clear calls quickly, efficiently and quickly, and get back in service to pick up the next call because, we're having units running across the county, the city, whatever it is. And, we got to have fire trucks and ambulances available that, this doesn't work. We'll just do our best to get our way through it. So Win, I'll let you go because I'll get off on a tangent and I will regret what I say. So
I'm with you. I think I don't want to say it was a fact because I think there are people out there who still feel like it has some merit to it. But I think the good thing that came out of it is the stuff that we talked about before. The vinyl seats, vinyl ceilings, smooth paint. Ricky mentioned Line-X. I'm not sure where he feels with it. I'm not a fan of Line-X. I think it's rough. It's hard to clean. I think that you could see when we were cleaning it, if you cleaned it with the wrong stuff, it was definitely discoloring it to some extent. So I think that stuff obviously has been, beneficial. The vinyls are a lot better now. Are they going to tear? Sure. Everything's going to tear at some point. There's something pulled tight somewhere on a seat that over 5 years is going to tear. Like Ricky said, you either send it out and have it reupholstered or put a new piece in. I've gone to the extent where I even try in my specifications to change the flooring out from a lot of it is either, a diamond plate, which is clean. That's good. That's easy to clean. But really that's most of the time as an extra piece that's put down on top of the acoustical flooring that most manufacturers use. I've gone to something more similar to what you see in an ambulance or an elevator, where it's easy to sweep, easy to mop, easy to clean out, but still has the traction. So it's safe in that extent. But again, it's one more thing that's easy to clean. The thing is we can do all of this. Is your firefighters aren't going to clean their fire truck out on a normal basis. It doesn't really matter if they're not going to wipe the seats down, if they're not going to vacuum behind it. Doesn't matter. But I think that clean cab concept has brought some good stuff to help, like Ricky said, to kind of decrease the cancer risks that were put on. I think he's right. We went to wireframe and no pad packs almost 5 years ago now, probably at this point. And when we did it, that was one of the big testing processes. We had buckets and trash cans of drywall and parts and pieces, and every air pack that we tested got put through a decontamination process. So there are other things to do than to assist with that. Then I think the big thing is sometimes you look at it, you forget the operational impacts that has on you. I remember being at a manufacturer going through and discussing clean cab, and they came, some people, they like to have these little powwow meetings at the side of the fire truck before they go attack the fire. And I'm just, you're sitting there thinking, I'm sure that the people that are inside that house are so glad that you're getting your stuff together, at the side of the fire truck instead of coming to save them. But, so again, I think there's good and bad parts of it. I haven't done anything with the air purification yet, so I'm not 100% on that to where, I want to kind of speak about it. I don't know if Ricky's dealt with it at all. Again, you look at it, I think it's great. I know where I'm at. We have the air conditioner cranked on 100% and the windows down. I'm not sure that having an extra, however much, couple $1,000 air purifier is going to assist when that's the way you ride around in your fire truck. And I'm sure a lot of people do that. The windows are down, the air is probably on unless it's 105-degree day. And again, we're talking about one area of the country that, if you're in Phoenix, it's a whole different world, right? Or Florida or whatever. But, even in the wintertime, somebody has a window down, which is moving air through that fire truck and just natural air purification, I guess, in that sense. So,
all right. Just curious where you guys were on that and what you've seen on that. But I did want to get to the exterior of the cabin. There's not, a tremendous amount to talk about there. When you were already talking about the step heights, what that first step needs to be. We've been talking about the tires and the wheel wells and all that kind of stuff. But where I was thinking of, and I guess it's, maybe tips you guys could offer is, if the equipment is not inside the cab, it's often attached to the outside of the cab. There's nothing wrong with that, but what are some of the considerations that departments need to keep in mind if they're deciding to mount a hook, right on the outside of the cab? What do they need to be thinking about for handles as they're getting up? There are different things. We've seen departments that recess the handles. They're still there, but they're recessed. Just talk about when some of the things that you're seeing departments ask for, and when you're doing your fleet evaluations, what you've seen that they have done that maybe wasn't the way the truck came, as it applies to the outside of the cab, tool mounting, things of that nature.
I think a couple of the big things is what are you going to do there, and what is necessary to protect either whatever you're going to put there or the fire truck itself. Are you going to mount a water can in a compartment? If you're going to do that, does a water can truly need to be protected? Does it need to have a door on it, or is there something else where we can leave it open? Can we marry? And we've done this. I know PG's have some trucks like this. Arlington has them, where you marry that the hooks are what hold the water can into place. So The water can is not going to fall out unless you take the hooks off of it. But again, it's one less thing. It's one less door, one less thing to break or get left open. And it doesn't need to be protected. If you're going to hang hooks on the side, again, you have to make sure that they stay there, protecting the paint of the cab, as much as possible. So what kind of scuff plates are you going to put on it? Are you going to do a full, brushed stainless or polished stainless scuff plate, diamond plate? How are you going to mount that on there? Would be the big things there. Handles, obviously, there has to be a non-slip handle. Lighted, non-lighted, it doesn't really matter, right? We're more worried about being a non-slip handle. So whether it's a aluminum knurled or if there's rubber in it or whatever, that's what you're looking for safety there. And I think to go just a little beyond that is what are you using for your perimeter lights? Obviously, NFPA dictates that we have perimeter lights at all the cab doors. But what are we trying to light up there? What are we trying to light up with our scene lights too? And you think about that and there's all types of new technology coming out with near sighting, far sighting, things like that. But it's part of that research is what do we want this thing to do and what's important? I think on the front, on the cab of a fire truck, and I think this is backed up by several of the lighting manufacturers, you're probably looking for a mixed optic, a flood spot where you're trying to not only, once you're on the scene, provide lighting to everything, but you're also using the cab lights to find addresses, to see things. So you want that spotlight that can go a little bit farther down the road. Whereas maybe on the back of the cab or the body, that spud flop's not as big a deal. But again, it gets even, into little tiny things like that, where we're putting our lights, what it's going to do, where the shadows are going to be. Again, at FDSOA, I sat through a lighting manufacturer's class, and, they have the capabilities to put whatever light you have based on your fire truck into computer generation, and they can show you where the shadows are going to be. So, leverage that, get out, talk to people, get your salesmen to use that. Again, think about the mission of the vehicle and what you needed to do and how you can make it work for you. And put the right tools on the side if you're going to put tools on the side of it, put the right tools on it. If you're going to have a transverse compartment underneath the seats to store long tools in, again, think about your streets. If you put a 6-foot hook, on a 12-foot street with cars parked on both sides of it, you're probably not going to get that out in the middle of the night. So, again, you got to think about a little bit of that. I see that all the time. It's like, I don't know that that's what you want to do, but, so I guess that I'll get off of that for now.
Ricky, what have you seen? What are the guys in your department putting on those trucks that you don't see until they come into the shop?
Nothing. We better not be. We don't better not be drilling into that paint, or drilling into that fire truck. We're pretty stringent about that. But I mean, obviously, we want stuff accessible as soon as you get out the cab. If you need your 6-foot hook, you need your irons, you need your water can, or anything like that. We do put ours behind a door now, a lot behind the door. But once again, if we go back talking about motors, is that, we've been told by our manufacturer that the new canister is going to eat up some of that door space that goes behind the crew cab door, that there's going to be a huge notch there. Or, with the new PACCAR, even the new Cummins, our current engines have 10-inch frame rails, and we like them like that. We never had a problem. We feel that it gets the fire truck a little lower to the ground for ergonomics. And now, due to the engine weight, we're going to have to increase to a 13-inch frame rail. Now we have to figure out what that compartment is going to look like now. Is it going to hold the bottom of a water can? Are we going to have to change it around? We even put we may put the dry chemical in there, something to get something out of a compartment on the body, somewhere tucked away inside the cab door somewhere in an accessory door there, just to get it out of the way and not in the cab. But once again, it's just taking a good look at your rigs and making sure we have a couple of the ladder trucks all have that cross compartment, the transverse compartment in there for like the polling tool and stuff like that. But once again, just like Win said, is that you got to be able to get it out when you get there. A lot of times we find that they don't like it like that. So what we think is right in the shop, and after conferring with people in the field, we think it's going to work, and then when they get out, hey, it's not going to work. And then just change it and make it work for the life of the vehicle. I mean, we just can't, go, hey, this is the way it's going to be, and that's the only way it's going to be, and it not work. It's just not going to. But we'll benefit not benefit. If we find it wrong on one truck, we'll go back and correct the other 6 or 7 that are in the fleet, or 15 that are in the fleet. So everybody, once again, with standardization within the department has become a critical step for us. So, if we change the location of one 6-foot hook, we're going to change the location on every rig that it's going to be on, so everybody finds it. But it's all good, Chris. All good stuff.
I have one more question about the exterior, and it has to do with decisions that we make that impact other areas of the rig. People love putting stuff on the front bumper, whether it be tools. They love putting hose. Sometimes it's in a well that you put donut rolls in. Some people are just putting the line straight across and on like a flat pack. What does that do to the tilt? What do you need to remember when you're configuring your bumper? What do you need to remember so that you don't, end up damaging the truck or damaging parts of the bumper when you go to tilt that cab based on what you've put there?
Buy extra headlight bezels. There's no, I mean, there's placards, there's warning labels. Hey, please, if you got a front intake, please move the swivel forward, before you tilt the cab, or please remove the Halligan bar. I mean, we do on special services, we do a 6-foot hook, a Halligan bar, a Halligan hook, and I forget what one other tool goes on that front bumper. I mean, it's about a 10-inch to 11-inch bumper that we put on. It fits all that. Chris, you asked me, look, when you take pictures of front bumpers, if you take it in a different aspect, it makes the bumper look like it's 26 inches long. So, making them, obviously, we want to make them as short as possible, just once again to cut down the overall length of the vehicle and help us with our turning and as we get into these streets. But, we're just making use of every available space that we can. And obviously, we run with rotor rays, so we always want to make sure that the bumper extends past the spinning rotor ray on the front, so nobody puts their head into it, even though it's happened before. So,
yeah, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that too. If you're going to hang stuff, and obviously the longer the bumper, or if you're going to do wells, it's going to affect your angle of approach, and that's the key too. And you need to look at, again, your first do or where you're going to go, and make sure that the angle of approach is going to fit. NFPA minimum is 8 degrees, but if you need more, you need to specify that. If you need 10.5, they need to know that, so that they're planning on it. And again, that bumper length, that depth is going to affect it. Front intakes, things like that. The covers, if you're going to have some sort on it. I know on our rescue truck, or old one here in Oxford, you used to have to take the center of the front bumper, had a cover on it. You had to take that off if you were going to lift the cab, so that the rotor ray would drop down in it. You could do, magnetic sensors that, don't allow the cab to tilt unless the front intake's in the right position, things like that. But also, obviously you can go with no bumper at all and suck the thing right up tight to the cab, but you also have to look at how the cab's built, and there are certain manufacturers that do a better job at it, and how you can avoid cab intrusion in the case of an accident. Everybody's putting these big steel bumpers on it and thinking that it's, this great protector, when in reality it's not. It's not going to do anything for you unless the bumper is built properly and it's supported back to the frame rails on the outside. Buffalo just had a wreck with one of their rescue trucks, and in the pictures you can see how well that bumper held up when it's laying on the ground. Obviously there's no cab intrusion there, but the bumper didn't hold up as well as you would think it is. And any time you look at a front bumper or a forward accident, you can look at that bumper and you can see how that just folded in half, even if it's a solid thick piece of steel, how it just folds in half if it's not supported. Again, when I'm doing trucks, 10 inches is the minimum that we try to go with, unless there's some, extenuating circumstance where we got to fit it in a firehouse or something. 10 inches is that minimum that I would like to see for the occupant protection. But again, it has to be built properly. And, I've been told by manufacturers that, we're not going to do that. It takes 4 extra hours, for us to do that to the fire truck. And we can't do it on that type of fire truck you're building because it's moving down this lane versus, the full custom lane where you could do it. So again, you think the manufacturers are trying to build safe fire trucks, but when you ask them to do something that takes another 4 hours, that's going to mess up their bottom dollar. It goes out the window there. So be your advocate, again, make sure that you're not just putting stuff on the front of your fire truck to put it there. It's there for a reason. And make sure that you don't go, too far with it to where it can, again, affect you operationally. Like Ricky said, you're trying to use up every little bit of space. So, again, make sure it has a purpose and do it properly.
All right, guys. Well, we covered quite a bit here. It's already been a little over an hour, so I'm going to let you guys get back to your day. I want to thank you again for jumping in with me on this. I'm sure there's like a million more things that we could talk about when we get into the cabs. If anyone has a question for Ricky or Win or both that about something about the cab that we didn't cover, let me know. I'm at chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com. If you have another topic, another part of the rig you'd like us to do a deep dive on, let me know again. chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com. And to view or listen to all of our podcasts, you can look to your favorite platform, but they're also all located at fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast. So again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment, along with Ricky Riley and Win Slauch. Have a good one and stay safe. Thanks again, guys.
See you, Chris.
Thank you.